Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Leadership Coaching Podcast with Joel Smith and Joe Baker. We're here to help you develop your superpowers. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com. Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I am Joel Smith, and I am in our Iowa virtual studio. And Joe is in Colorado. Joe, how you doing today?
Hey, doing good. Excited to have a podcast with Jeff Myers.
Jeff Myers, yeah. Jeff is one of my favorite people. He's had a tremendous impact on my life. I think, Joe, you and I probably met him 20 years ago, right? Close to 20 years ago. Summit Ministries. Yeah,
wow.
But
you were four and I was 5, huh?
Yeah. I know.
Looking so good.
I know. I walked away from Summit a changed person. I hadn't been a believer for too long, for maybe five or 7 years or so. I had all of these ideas running around in my head about the Bible and about religion, and I didn't know how they all fit together. And coming to Summit changed everything for me. Now, I was not a student as a high school or college student. I was a youth leader at that time, but I was still learning with my students, and so it made a huge impact on me. So, Jeff, I just want to tell you that you're one of my heroes and one of the guys that changed the trajectory of everything I do now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we get to spend a little bit of time together. I haven't seen you for quite a while.
Yeah.
So this is great to catch up.
Yeah. So Dr. Jeff Myers is one of America's most respected authorities on youth leadership development. And Dr. Myers is the president of Summit Ministries, a highly respected Worldview training program whose tens of thousands of graduates are making a difference in politics, law, academics, medicine, science, and business. That's pretty incredible because when you think about it, if somebody's going to make an impact in politics, they need to be an expert in politics, you'd think. And if you want to make an impact in medicine, you need to be a doctor of medicine or a professor of that. But what this all shows me is that, Jeff, what you and Summit Ministries is doing, you're going to a more foundational part of our thinking that all of these things connect to. They're all connected to our worldview. And so when we can teach worldviews, you can make a difference in all of these. So, Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and tell us about Summit.
Well, Summit Ministries may be known to people who are fans of Sidekick, but we're equipping and supporting a rising generation to embrace God's truth and to champion a biblical worldview. So we want our students to be biblically literate, but we want them to become leaders in the culture in which they find themselves. And so we help them no matter what they're going into. I have students who worked in the White House. I have students who are welders. No matter what they go into, we want them to see it from a biblical viewpoint, be great members of their community, great moms and dads, and people who decide that they want to live their lives in a way that makes a difference. So I've had the privilege of being involved with Summit Ministries for most of my life. At age 17, I was getting ready to graduate from high school. The church we attended, I couldn't get people to give me answers to the kinds of annoying questions that I was asking. And so I had pretty much decided that I would graduate from high school and graduate from church at the same time. Well, my parents arranged for me to attend a Summit Ministries course in this little hippie town, Manitou Springs, Colorado, tucked right in at the foot of Pikes Peak. I can see Pikes Peak right out my window here. And I came into the hotel and met the director of the program, Dr. David Noble. And I said to him, I hope you have a lot of answers because I have a lot of questions. I was about the cockiest 17-year-old there is. Except for Joe. You were pretty cocky when you were 17. I remember.
Yeah, he was.
But David Noble said to me, he said, look, we're not afraid of questions at Summit. I can't tell you what that meant to me. I didn't need somebody to say, look, kid, we have all the answers. Don't worry. You don't even have to think. We'll do your thinking for you. That would have been a disaster. But when someone said, we're not afraid of questions, we'll ask the questions right alongside of you. We'll walk alongside of you as you find answers. That was the confidence I needed to reverse course and grow stronger in my faith. And here it is, irony of ironies, that for almost 10 years, I've had the privilege of being the president of the ministry.
It's amazing. Amazing. I say Summit was so important to me in my life because it helped me understand what a foundation is of your worldview. And I still remember the 4 basic questions and just writing them down on my notepad, like origin, meaning, morality, destiny, and beginning to think about how those questions affected everything about what I believed. And when you really look out at the framework, you notice that like certain people believe a lot of things the same, but it comes down to the foundational questions. And Summit's really good at kind of helping students see that.
And
Really
and the deadly questions as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The 4 deadly questions.
Yep, 4
It's
deadly
5
questions.
questions now. We've had a little
Is
bit of
it?
inflation.
Yeah, fair enough.
What are the 5 deadly questions?
So first one, I think I won't get them all, but I'll get a few of them to begin with. So the first one I think is, how do you know that, right? Where do you get your information? Yeah, where do you get your information? How do you know if it's right? What happens if you're wrong? What's the last couple?
Wow.
Are you sure, right?
If you're introduced to a new idea, are you willing to believe it? Something of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Define your terms. That's got to be, you've got to do that right up front.
Yep.
I mean, we live in a culture today where people just randomly make up definitions on all kinds of things.
Right.
And they never explain how they know what they're saying is actually true. They just assume that it's true and believe that if they can amass enough power to shame others into agreeing, they've somehow won.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I know that Summit, you talk so much about purpose. You talk about how we as believers, our worldview, the pinpoint of that is purpose. It's, we need to live out the gospel message. And boy, we have a culture right now that just seems to be visionless. And I remember learning, the scripture where there's no vision, people perish. And I don't know if I saw that first at Summit, but that has stuck with me ever since. And so, Jeff, talk to us a little bit about the culture of today. Like, where's the vision?
Well, I've been tracking this since 2008 when I read a book by Will Damon, who's a professor at Stanford University. He found in his studies that 4 out of 5 young adults do not have a sense of purpose and that they know where they're going in life and why they would go there. So in place of purpose, they have jobs. In place of purpose, they may have their gaming or the activities that distract them. But everything is just maintenance, right? It's just floating along. There's no particular destination. So I decided at that point I would, as I had the opportunity to influence young adults, and we get to influence a lot of them, entirely aside from the videos that we put on YouTube, but they get hundreds of thousands of views. We're influencing about 50,000 young people a year that we get to train in very intensive situations. So it's really incredible to see how they are shifting the culture as they move into college and beyond. But I decided that I would make it a primary purpose to help them grasp the fact that they are made in God's image, that God has gifted them with motivated abilities, things not only that they can do, but things that they cannot not do, things that are core to the particular design that God has given to them. And if we could help them discover those things and unleash them, they might go out and do the same jobs that they would have done before, but they will do them completely differently because they know why they're here on this planet. And it becomes a calling and not just a way to get a paycheck.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. Jeff, one thing that I think is a misconception in our world too is that just because we get plugged into a church and just because we believe that Jesus is our Savior, and just because we read the Bible, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're learning a worldview. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're understanding a biblical worldview. It could be that we're mixing and matching from different philosophies and different world religions and different ideas that we, learn from, from Facebook or from the news or wherever. And so, this biblical worldview, this is really the whole core to Summit. It's not just learning a bunch of things about the Bible.
A lot of people come to church hoping to be rescued. I have a son who's a lifeguard, and I think about him rescuing people. But being rescued is not the end of the story, or it shouldn't be, right? If you're in a boat that capsizes and somebody comes to rescue you, you're grateful. But you're being rescued and making it safely back to shore is not the end of your life. Talking about a biblical worldview, it goes beyond what a lot of people think they're going to get from church, which is Jesus rescued me. I'm coming here because I'm still grateful. It's now, how do we build boats that actually go someplace? As CT Shed said, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are for. We're to be out there doing things, going places, and I think that's the heart of a biblical worldview, is that Jesus doesn't just save us from something, but for something. Now, I don't know if everybody's who's watching this is coming from a Christian worldview, so this may all just be total gibberish, but we all do recognize that our lives aren't lived backwards, just trying to preserve what we have. We're trying to move forward. That's the whole point of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think there's
Amen.
this idea too in the church that a lot of people embrace, and it kind of goes back to President Kennedy's speech where he says, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." I think it's the same thing. The Christian version of that would be, "Ask not what God can do for you, but what you can do for God and His followers." I would add, but and so yeah, God isn't for us. We're for the kingdom, and that's a difference between a biblical worldview and religion, really. So yeah,
Yeah.
religion focuses on what God does for us, right? So yeah.
Jeff, what are some of the pitfalls of finding your calling or purpose? Like, what are the areas where you see students kind of set off with great ambition and then kind of get lost along the way?
Mm.
What should we be careful of?
I spend a lot of time with them, helping them overcome one central myth that they hear from the day they graduate from college or from high school from their graduation speaker, who always says, "Follow your dreams." Now, I have to stop and say, yeah, I want to have dreams. I want to dream big things. But when you say follow your dreams to a young adult, very often what they hear is um, fill in your insecurities. So if you don't feel that you have enough friends, then maybe your dream is that you'll be a celebrity. If you feel financially insecure, maybe your dream is that you will be wealthy. But filling in the gaps is a central problem that I think a lot of students have when they try to discover their purpose. So I have had students who I ask them, what are you planning to do vocationally? And that's an interesting word choice. I make that choice on purpose, and we can talk about that if you want. What are you interested in doing vocationally? And one of them might say, hey, I'm going to go to medical school. Why are you going to go to medical school? Because I'm good at math, I'm good at science, and I like making lots of money, which are horrible reasons to become a medical professional.
Right.
But that's where a lot of young people are. And so we have to deal with that right off the bat and say, what is it about money that is so compelling to you? I mean, I want to be able to have a very good means of provision for my family. And that's part of being an entrepreneur as well. But if it is about the money, then it's a trap, isn't it? Because you're doing stuff even that you may hate just because you can make money doing it. Let me tell you, I'm old enough in my life. I have dozens of friends who are medical professionals. Some of them have gotten to be at the very highest level, heart surgeons and brain surgeons. And some of them make a very good salary, but they do not love what they do. They do it because now
Wow.
they feel like they have to, because they're the best at it. But they never did take the time to find what that core reason is. Why do you do what you do? What are the things that you can do that return energy to you and make you feel more alive? That's where I want to go with the students I work with.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, and it reminds me of so many, like, I mean, really, money is just a byproduct of serving people. And if we really have that love of providing a need for others, caring for others, it's like money comes, and that's much more fulfilling in our life. And you're totally right that sometimes we get kind of addicted to the money, and you lose sight of that, and you end up, not really enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I think
that's
there's a
right.
lot of people out there that are stuck in a career, even though on the surface they look really successful. They might be really successful, well known, the experts in their field, but there's oftentimes something missing. There's something missing, and as you alluded to there, Jeff, they're doing it because they're already down that road and they can't really turn back now. But I'll bet we would find that if we could really do a cross section of our culture, we would find that. Everywhere. We would find that in all professions and many people we would never suspect.
Let me affirm that that is correct, because I just did some research on this last week, not in preparation for this podcast, but on a chapter that I'm working on in a book. Globally, in a Gallup study of people in 160 countries, 85% of people are not engaged at work.
Wow.
85%. So
Wow.
there are a billion or more unhappy workers in the world. And the cost economically is extraordinary. Jim Clifton, who's the chairman of Gallup, said that you can actually assign a financial cost to the number of days a person might be absent from their job or their lack of productivity. It would be about $2,500 a year per worker. So he thinks that the economic cost in the United States of America alone is $350 billion a year from lack of
Wow.
engagement.
And it costs everybody. It's a cost that just it's shouldered by every person.
Well, that's right. And you think of the intangible cost. If you go home from your job and your husband or your wife and your kids see that you're so unhappy and disengaged, I mean, they're not paying attention to what you say. They're paying attention to your actions. Kids are very intuitive. They're like dogs in the sense they're very intuitive. They do not listen to what you say. They're only watching what you do. And so it can perpetuate itself. And that's not an economic cost, but it is a high social cost.
Right. You know, Jeff, you
Wow.
mentioned a term earlier. You said you used the term discovering your purpose. And I love that idea because that's exactly what we need to do. We need to discover our purpose. But unfortunately, I think, you know, with our young people these days, when they're faced towards going off to college and moving beyond college to their careers, the overwhelming message of our culture is to determine your future, to determine what you're going to be. So it's your choice. And so you get the freedom to make that choice. And so what's the difference? What do you teach at Summits as far as the difference between discovering your purpose and determining your purpose?
Well, I'm really trying to teach my students four things. First of all, I want them to get a vision. I want them to have a vision for the world. And what I mean by vision is seeing the world from God's perspective. I want them to overcome the idea that they are at the center of reality, that there's much of our lives where we're not just asking God, do you see me? Do you hear me? We should be asking God, will you show me what you see? Will you help me hear what you hear? Will you help me be your hands and feet so that I'm doing what you would do if you were here with me in person? And the second thing I'm asking them to develop is a sense of mission. And by that, I mean, I want them to understand their motivated abilities. I'll usually have them make a list, 15 to 25 stories, and the stories are key. 15 to 25 stories of times where they did something in their lives that returned energy to them and gave them a great sense of satisfaction. That is a massive journaling assignment. It'll take them a couple of hours to do it, but it is transformational because as you look through all of your stories, you start to see themes. For instance, when I went through my stories, for 14 years of my life, I was a professor. That was my career. And I loved being a professor, but I also loved the schedule that professors have because it enabled me to do so many other things, all related around teaching. I could travel and speak and write books and things like that. But I made my list long ago of all those things that return energy to me and made me feel more alive. And I took up a mentor's challenge to go back all the way as far as I could remember in my childhood. And my mother helped me. You guys know that at one point I founded a couple of different educational companies that provided leadership and communication, public speaking, training materials to people. But my mother brought a picture to me and said, when you were 4, you drew this picture. Do you know what it is? And it was a cutaway view of a truck because I always drew the cutaway view, right? I mean, that's one of those weird, like when most kids would draw the picture of the house with the front windows, the curtains and the smoke curling out in the sun. I drew it from the top looking down inside to see what the rooms were. So it was a cutaway view of a truck, and in the back were all these little circles. And I asked her, what are those circles? And she said, you don't remember? I said, I was 4. She said, at the time, you told me all of those circles were films and that you had a film truck and you were going to take films from school to school to school to school and use them to teach children.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
A chill went down my spine because it was exactly what I was doing, providing these educational materials to help schools train students in leadership skills and in public speaking. And it went all the way back to when I was a small child. If I'd been paying attention more, I might have arrived at my sense of purpose a little bit earlier. The reason I didn't want to be a teacher when I was in high school is because I saw the kinds of cars my teachers drove and the kinds of houses they lived in, and I did not want to live like that. I wanted to do something that would give me a much stronger means of provision. But
Yeah.
when you're an entrepreneur, you can transcend that very quickly. I was able to start companies on the side in addition to my teaching job that enabled me to teach more and also be able to sock away a little bit extra for my family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great when you can vocationally, when you can get to the place where you have freedom to really be creative in the way that you serve Christ, and the way that we can do that. And I know Joe and I are we're fortunate to be at that place too, where we work on our businesses and not necessarily in them, and we can do lots of great things that we feel going to bring glory to God,
Now,
and so on. But
let me say, because I know when we talk about this, it can be very discouraging and hurtful to people. Imagine that you've been a faithful person. You went to college or you got your vocational training, you got your job, you don't like it, but you go every day because you want to honorably care for your family, but you have that quiet sense of desperation inside. Let me just first say, I honor every worker. That you are going to your job and you are providing for your family is something to be honored for. That is an extraordinary privilege and a calling in and of itself, whether you find joy in it or not. Um, but I'm also wanting, when I work with adults, I try to ask them the question: what are those things that return energy to you and help you feel more alive? And how can you do more of those things in the job that you have? My wife Stephanie has a job that is, she's very successful at it, uh, but she sometimes has to find things about the job that relate to her spiritual life purpose. For example, just this morning, she told me that she had had a couple of conversations with fellow employees in her job, encouraging them because she knew they were going through a rough patch. Well, she finds those to be extraordinarily energizing conversations that give meaning to the rest of her day. So you don't have to have a sense of purpose all the time, but if you can just get 10% of your time, 4 hours a week to do things that really get to your core purpose, encouraging others, enlivening others, learning, growing, those kinds of things, it can change the way you see all the rest of your hours.
That's
wow.
good. And as an entrepreneur, whenever you start up something, you kind of have to wear every hat and do everything. And within that, there's all sorts of parts that, like, man, I can't believe I'm doing admin again. I can't believe I'm doing these other pieces again that I don't want to do. Just give me something to sell. And it's like, I think we also do people that have to adapt and learn how to really be grateful, even when we have a job that isn't like perfectly fit with our calling, but have a vision to escape that. And it's like, if we have a vision to escape that and build teams around it and get people who are highly talented at these different things, 'cause the world's full of people that are made to do admin. It's like they love it. It's like, if I can pass that on to them, it's great. But in that meantime, I've got to be a person that has my own or security, and inner confidence to just get through something and not be a miserable person too.
Everybody's got to mow the lawn. Everybody's got to take out the trash. There are chores to do no matter what kind of position you get in. Even if you're doing something that you've dreamed of your whole life, there will always be aspects to it that are chore like. the goal is not to get to the place where you don't have to do anything you don't like to do. The goal is to get to the place where you so thoroughly enjoy that 10% of the 20% of the time where you are in the zone that it gives meaning to everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So we are talking with Dr. Jeff Myers from Summit Ministries. Jeff, for the listeners out there, how can they get a hold of you, and how can they learn more about Summit Ministries, in case they've got some teenagers in the home?
There are a couple of things you can do. First, I would love for you to come to summit.org and see the programs and the courses that we have for young adults. This summer, we have in-person programs and virtual programs that bring students together with top Christian thought leaders who can help answer their tough questions, help them strengthen their biblical worldview, and then prepare for leadership. So check out those programs. I think the in-person ones are probably full, but the virtual programs, well, there'll be students participating from all over the world. Last summer, they were from 45 different countries. So that'll be very exciting. You'll get to know people from all over the world, students from all over the world, and get that training, and you can do that from home. Second thing is just look at my podcast, The Dr. Jeff Show. You can get that wherever you can find podcasts. We even are on Google Play now.
Yeah. I just listened to a couple of your episodes, Jeff, before you came on, and it's terrific. You have some really, really great guests. So I would recommend anybody that wants to learn more about worldviews to really check out the podcast.
The podcast's theme is Worldview Changes Everything. And I have had everybody on there from multi-platinum rock singers to journalists to people who fight sex trafficking. And we don't shy away from the tough questions. So if you're looking for how does a biblical worldview apply to some of these random areas of life where I just didn't see the fit before, then you can check out some of those episodes and see if you like it. If you like it, subscribe. If you like it really well, tell your friends.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, Jeff, for your time. We appreciate you being on the show. If you want to learn more about Superhero Sidekick, please check it out. We're in most of the podcast apps. Please go to our Facebook page as well and like our page and subscribe. And we would love to hear any comments. Let us know what you think about Dr. Jeff as well, and we'd be glad to send you that way as well. So, hey, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Joe, what do you think? We good to go?
Yeah, heck yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much, Jack.
Yep.
Great show.
Thanks, everybody.